Chapter 21. TheSeaWitch. The others were thrilled by the twins' triumphant return from the castle ruins. "Well done," Froggy said, and patted them on the back with a relieved smile. "We knew you could do it," Goldilocks said, and winked at them. Red took the wand from Connor, and she was mesmerized by it. "So shiny," she said, although the twins weren't positive she was impressed by the accomplishment so much by the fact they had returned with something else she could view herself in. "Was everything all right in there?" Jack asked them. The twins looked at each other and both fell silent. "Not exactly," Connor said. "We saw the evil queen." "She's been trapped in the magic mirror ever since she used the wishing spell," Alex said. Everyone was just shocked, as the twins had been to discover this. "How horrible," Goldilocks said quietly to herself. "There's no hope of getting her out now, I suppose," Jack said. Connor shook his head. "She doesn't want to be rescued. She thinks she deserves to be in there. There's not much left to her to save anyway." "Well, speaking as one of the victims she kidnapped and almost fed to wolves, I'm not so sure I feel sorry for her," Red confessed. "There's more bad news," Alex said. "We asked her about the Enchantress. She probably knew her better than anyone." "What did she say?" Froggy asked, and they all leaned closer to hear the answer. "She said Mia's most prized possession is herself," Alex said. Jack, Goldilocks, and Froggy looked at one another with the same exasperated expression. "That doesn't make any sense," Froggy said. "How could living things make up the wand? I understand how the harp could be considered the prize item, but not the Enchantress herself." Red scrunched her lips and hummed, thinking on the subject. "I think the evil queen is mistaken. I'm not a stranger to love in myself, but that self-admiration comes from something. For example, if you took away my beauty or my incredible ability to match dresses with tiaras, I wouldn't value myself half as much as I do now." The others weren't sure how to gauge to outbursts. Red was always very coherent or not at all. There was rarely any in-between. "What are you saying, Red?" Goldilocks asked. "I'm saying it's not an actual woman we should be concerned about getting," Red explained. "We need to find out what the Enchantress values most about her and take it away from her." Everyone thought about it, and their heads slowly moved in a mutual nod. This was the first moment any of them were happy Red had demanded to come alone on the trip. "That is insightful, Red," Connor said. "Shallow, but insightful." "How do we retrieve it from the wand?" Jack asked. No one could come up with an immediate answer. What was the one quality Mia prized above the rest? There were so many things she obviously cherished. Her beauty? Her power? Her ruthlessness? Or perhaps it was a combination of all three. And whatever it was, how would they take it away from her? "Well, we knew it would be a challenge," Goldilocks said, and let out a long sigh. The six headed over the moat and back to the granny. They returned to the furious harp, whose strings played an angry chord as she pouted. "Harper? What's the matter?" Jack asked her. "That thing peed on me!" the harp exclaimed, pointing to Claudius, who was crouching shamefacedly in the corner of the lower deck. "It's my fault. I forgot to take him up before we left," Red said. "My apologies. Mother in training." She scooped him up and carried him off the ship. The crew waited until nightfall before firing at the ship and steering in the south. "Next stop, Mermaid Bay," Jack called out. "Does the TheSeaWitch live in the bay?" Connor asked. "From what I read, she lives in the ocean waters just outside of it," Froggy said. "How would we find her?" Goldilocks said. "I'm a good swimmer, believe it or not," Froggy said. "I have a look around the ocean floor and report back to you. We'll have to be very careful once we get there. The TheSeaWitch is known for being very sneaky with her trades." "We'll have to outsmart her then," Alex said. "If her jewels are her most valued possession, we'll have to trade her something in exchange for them." "What's the most valuable item we have in our possession?" Connor asked. "What do we have to trade with her?" "The harp?" Red asked a little hopefully. "No, we need to keep her until we can figure out how to incorporate her into the wand," Jack said. Goldilocks' face suddenly lit up, and an actual light bulb had appeared over her head. "I think we're all forgetting something in our possession that's even more valuable," she said. "What's that?" Alex asked. Then it all They all stared in the completely puzzled. Red, Goldilocks said. We have an actual queen on our ship. Everyone immediately turned to look at Red. As expected, the young queen was appalled by the idea. You want to trade me for the TheSeaWitch like some farm animal? Red said. Absolutely not. Out of the question. It is a good option, Jack said, defending Goldilocks' idea. Brad grunted and her nostrils flared. Now you listen to me, giant chaser, she said, and pointing her finger at all of them. So far, I've built us a ship, lost half my wardrobe, adopted a killer animal, snug it to a wicked stepmother's estate, and supplied something nice to look at during the escapade. If you ask me, I've gone above and beyond what a normal queen would do. Do you see Cinderella flying a mile above the ground? No. Is Snow White risking her life for the greater good? No. Is Rapunzel braiding her hair to restore peace and harmony? No. Everyone slumped. They couldn't argue, but they also didn't have much to work with. I'll do it then, Goldilocks said. What? Jack asked. I'll pretend to be Red, Goldilocks said plainly. You can trade me in for the jewels, and the TheSeaWitch will be wiser. We most certainly will not, Jack protested, outraged by just the suggestion of it. It's the best way, Goldilocks said. After you collect the jewels, you only have one more thing to complete the wand. Once you defeat the Enchantress, we can come back for me. Until then, I'll keep my cover and make the TheSeaWitch happy. Jack was shaking his head. He couldn't imagine leaving the woman he loved and the most in the world in the hands of someone so horrible. Oh, Jack, Goldilocks said, flattered by how worked up he had become. You know I'll be able to handle little old TheSeaWitch. I've been stuck in the worst situations before. Jack held her close, looking deeply into her eyes. What if, for whatever reason, we can't come back for you, he said. Goldilocks looked down at the floor, knowing what he meant. If I get anxious, I'll find a way out, she said, and returned in his loving gaze. You have to trust me. It was an incredible sacrifice to make, but no one could persuade her otherwise. Red, I never thought I would ever say this, but I'm going to need to borrow a dress, Goldilocks said. I doubt anything of mine will fit you, Red said. Froggy cleared his throat. Darling, don't be rude, he said. That is, I'm sure I can make something work, Red said, and gave in. She grabbed Goldilocks' hand and dragged her down to the lower deck to play dress-up. Jack went to the steering wheel and looked ahead of them to the horizon, but his thoughts were anywhere but with the ship. Froggy played tug-of-war with Claudius, while Alex and Connor sat on the deck floor near the bow of the Granny. Alex rested her head on her hand and stared off into space, having her own reservation about their plan. What's on your mind? Connor asked Alex. You look troubled. Alex sighed. It's just a little concerning to think about leaving Goldilocks to the TheSeaWitch, she said. I know, but what else can we do? It's a great idea, Connor said. I guess, Alex said. Something had been on her mind, and she felt it was time to tell her brother before her head exploded. Connor, when we came back in the northern mountains, the Snow Queen had said something to me. I didn't think much of it, but it's really starting to worry me now. What did she tell you? Connor asked. She said of the 4 travelers, one will not return, Alex said. I thought it was just nonsense. I mean, an avalanche had just fallen on the woman, but now I wonder if she was making a prophecy. I wonder if she was talking about Goldilocks. But there's 6 of us traveling, Connor said. 7 including the mutt and 8 counting the harp. I know it doesn't make sense, Alex said and rubbed her tired eyes. But I'm still worried. There may have been some truth to it. We've been really lucky so far, but what if one of us didn't survive this trip? Connor surprised her with his reaction. He didn't reciprocate her fear, but met it with the calmness and reminded her of their dad. Alex, we all knew what we were getting into, he said. Just because you and I are spearheading the mission doesn't mean it's our fault if anything goes wrong. We're all trying to save the world, and as awful as it sounds, if one of us doesn't make it in the process, I can't think of a better way to die than being a hero. She let a long, exasperated breath escape her lungs. There are worse fates, I suppose, Alex said. I hate to lose someone for no reason, though. I don't know if I could live with myself. We'll just have to make sure we succeed then, Connor said. Within the hour, Red climbed up from the lower deck with a proud smile on her face. She said, getting all their attention. Lady, wolf, and gentlemen, I would like to introduce to you my latest creation. She may be a rough porridge-eating fugitive by day, but tonight I would like to introduce to you the new and improved Goldilocks. Goldilocks walked up the steps behind her. She was wearing one of Red's corsets with a long red gown, a hooded cape, and matching gloves. Red had even put her hair up in a stylish do, similar to her own, and had painted some rouge on her cheeks. There was no doubt about it. Goldilocks looked stunning. Goldie, Jack said, you look gorgeous. He looked like a teenager in love. Thank you, Goldilocks said and blushed. She didn't get too many opportunities to look pretty for him. You're welcome, Red said and swayed happily. The corset is a little small for her, poor thing. Her waist isn't quite as slender as mine. That's because I'm hiding 3 daggers under here, Goldilocks said. She had trouble balancing in a pair of Red's high heels. I don't know how you walk in these shoes. They're completely impractical. I don't know how you walk in them either. They're meant for feet almost half the size of yours. I'm only teasing, Goldie. Put the knife away. Red said and ran to the other side of the ship. The harp grew bored below them and began to play a soft melody for herself that could be heard on the upper deck. Jack grabbed Goldilocks' waist. Care to dance, he asked. Jack, Goldilocks laughed. Come on, when's the last time we got to dance, Jack asked. The last time I believe involved a witch throwing hot stones at our feet, she said. Jack chuckled at the memory and spun her around. They danced to the harp's tune under the starry night sky, gazed into each other's eyes. Would you do me the honor, Froggy asked Red, and offered her his hands with an overly pronounced bow. I'd be delighted, Red said. She didn't dance quite as smoothly as Jack and Goldilocks. Red kept stepping on Froggy's large webbed feet, but both couples enjoyed the time for all it was worth. The twins smiled as they looked on, knowing this would be something they remember forever. It was a few minutes before dawn, and the granny was still a ways away from the Mermaid Bay. We're not going to make it to the bay before sunrise, Jack said from behind the steering wheel. We need to put the ship down before we get caught. We can travel the rest of the way by water, Goldilocks said. We'll land in the sleepy river and then sail down the river into the bay. That's brilliant, Froggy said. Very well, Jack said. Everyone prepare the ship for a water landing. Goldilocks took over the steering wheel. Froggy grabbed hold of the sail's ropes and flattened them on the sides of the balloon. Jack pulled the lever under the ship's flames and it diminished. The granny began to descend. Goldilocks aligned the ship with the wide river flowing on the ground below. The twins weren't sure what to expect. Would a water landing be rougher or easier? In a few moments, they had their answer. The ship dove into the water, coming to a painful, abrupt stop and nearly submerging itself completely on impact. The entire deck and its crew were drenched. Connor spat out a mouthful of water. Thank goodness that was easy, he said sarcastically. I'm on my side. I can't get up, the harp called from the lower deck. The wolf is licking my face. Can someone please help me before he gets any other ideas? Froggy hopped down on the steps to assist her. Red ran her wet dress over the side of the ship. She was not enjoying life at that moment. The ship sailed perfectly down the river as the sun rose farther into the sky. Not long after, Mermaid Bay came into view ahead. The ship was just about to spill into the bay from the river when it came to another abrupt stop, knocking everyone on the deck floor. Jack jumped to his feet and ran to the front of the ship to look overboard. The ship is stuck in the delta, he said. The twins joined him and looked for themselves. The granny was only feet away from fully being in the bay, but it was stuck in a very narrow channel. Oh, great, Connor grunted. Now what? Just as the others were about to panic, something very colorful caught Alex's eyes. Look, she said, and excitedly pointed down the water. The thing swam under the ship and disappeared from sight. Where did it go? Jack asked. Alex, Connor, Jack! Froggy yelled from the back of the ship. Take a look at this! They joined on the back of the ship and gazed into the river below. It was difficult to make out what was happening through the ripples of the water, but Alex and Connor recognized it right away. Dozens of mermaids had gathered behind the granny and were slowly pushing the ship through the delta. They had pale skin and long, colorful trails that matched their long, beautiful hair, just as the twins had remembered. The ship began to move through the channel little by little, thanks to the mermaids' efforts. Well, it'll be dawn, Froggy said, amazed at what he was witnessing. The granny edged forward bit by bit, finally squeezing through the channel and splashed into the bay. That was so kind of them, Alex said. Why were they helping us? Connor asked. Goldilocks whistled from behind the steering wheel. Speaking of mysteries, what is that? She nodded to something ahead of them. In the distance, hovering majestically in the misty bay air, was a large cluster of sea foam. It was shaped into the silhouette of a mermaid and shimmered in the sunlight, continuously rejuvenating itself. Alice grabbed Connor's arm. It's a sea foam spirit, she said. Come again, Froggy asked. It's a little mermaid, Connor explained to the others. Or at least it used to be. I wonder what she's doing here. Whew, listen. You think she knows we're going to visit the TheSeaWitch? Alex asked. The granny sailed closer to the foam until it hovered directly in front of the ship. Hello, Alex. Hello, Connor, the sea foam spirit said. The others were shocked to hear her speak. Red rubbed her eyes. She didn't believe what she was seeing. Is this clump of bubbles a friend of yours? She asked the twins, as if she was making a judgment against their character. What are you doing here? Alex asked the sea foam. I come to speak to you, the sea foam spirit said. You're trying to stop us from going to visit the TheSeaWitch, aren't you? Connor said. On the contrary, I've come to assist you, the spirit said. I may be the world's greatest cautionary tale when it comes to matters of the TheSeaWitch, but I've come to offer your help. I've heard about your quest. We all have. The spirit gestured to the water below, where all the mermaids had gathered. The bay looked like a colorful koi pond. Who told you about our quest? Alex said. No one told me. I heard your thoughts, the sea foam spirit said. I thought you could only hear and feel thoughts expressed on and near the water. Connor said, remembered what he had learned during their last encounter. As the snow melts down the mountains and pours into the rivers that led to the sea, it brings with the thoughts of those who have traveled across it. Connor hooted. So much for privacy, he said. How can you help us? Alex asked the spirit. Can you take us to the TheSeaWitch? I cannot leave the bay, the sea foam spirit said, but I have asked an old friend to escort you to the depths of the sea, where the TheSeaWitch dwells. That would be terrific, thanks, Connor said. Who is your friend? Are they solid at least? Very, the sea foam spirit said. Suddenly, a gigantic splash erupted from the bay, and a sea turtle of epic proportions emerged from the water. He was as big as their ship. The entire crew was flabbergasted, and their eyes grew to the size of tennis balls. Connor leaned closer to Froggy. I never thought I'd see a reptile as big as you, he whispered. The great sea turtle is very old, the sea foam spirit said. He can't hear very well, but he will escort you to the TheSeaWitch. How far away is the TheSeaWitch's lair? Jack asked. It's a day's journey to the bottom of the ocean, the sea foam spirit said, but the great sea turtle can get you there in a quarter of the time. How are we supposed to breathe? Goldilocks asked. The sea foam spirit extended both her hands to 6 white scallops shells appeared. They each had seaweed band around them, like they were oceanic surgical masks. The sea foam spirit passed them to the men and women aboard the ship. These will supply with the air while you're under the water, she said. Do they come in pink? Red said. Froggy passed on his shell. I'll be fine, he said. Being a frog has its perks, you know. He took a very deep breath, and his throat expanded to a large bubble. Oh, so... Connor chuckled and poked it. The sea foam spirit nodded and the great sea turtle. It's time, she instructed. The turtle drifted toward the ship and placed its front flipper gently on the bow of the drawbridge. Jack and Froggy armed themselves with daggers and rope, and led the others over the turtle's flipper and onto a shell. They gathered at the front of the shell, and each held tightly to the edge. "Good luck. May all the spirits of the sea be with you," the seafoam spirit said. Then she disappeared. The turtle drifted away from the granny and gradually sank into the water. The water was colder than they expected, and they all gave small yelps. It was very strange to breathe from the shells. They inhaled normally, but a trail of tiny bubbles fluttered above them every time they exhaled. It was like they were magically scuba diving, and just like the regular scuba diving, there was plenty to see. An entire bay floor was covered with bright corals and plants. Mermaids and fish of all colors and sizes swam through it like it was a vast underwater city, their bodies shimmering in the rippled sunlight from above. It was a beautiful sight, and the twins made sure to seize every moment of it. Soon they left the bay, and the silent sea turtle traveled deeper into the endless ocean ahead. The ocean floor wasn't nearly as colorful as the bottom of the bay. It was very bare, with nothing but rocks and seaweed spread across it. An enormous underwater canyon was ahead of them, and the turtle dived down into it. It had jagged edges and sharp rocks along its side, and the canyon floor was littered with ghostly empty shells. It was like an underwater graveyard. They knew they were close. The turtle swam through the canyon, and the twins saw a wide entrance of the underwater cave ahead. The cave was surrounded with small glowing lights, inviting and decorative. However, as they got closer, the twins realized the lights were the glowing entity of a school of anglerfish surrounding the entrance of the cave. They were terrifying with their sharp, toothy overbites and the spikes down their spines. They are the monsters of the sea. The anglerfish glared at them as the turtle passed into the cave. To their discomfort, the inside of the cave was filled with even more of the scary-looking fish. They peered out from behind stalagmites and stalactites. From their entity gave off the only light of the cave. Imprisoned behind nets and rocks cages throughout the cave were other sea creatures. Swordfish, seahorses, octopi, manatees, and whales all looked somberly at the passing turtle, hoping it wouldn't suffer the safe fate. The anglerfish watched over the creatures like prison guards. The turtle arrived at the entrance of a long tunnel. As if the twins hadn't seen enough to give them nightmares for years after, the tunnel was being watched over by a group of great white sharks. They lingered eerily in the water, staring sinisterly at the turtle and his passengers. The sea turtle moaned at the sharks. Nothing happened. The turtle moaned again. The sharks slowly separated and let them pass into the tunnel. They turned chillingly as they passed. All they needed was one threatening gesture, and the sharks would have food for a week. They traveled through the tunnel for a few moments, and then surfaced in a cave within the cave. To their astonishment, this cave was filled with air. "We can breathe down here," Alex said, and they all took off their shell masks. The TheSeaWitch had to appeal on their human customers, too, Froggy said, and his throat deflated to normal. They climbed onto the turtle and walked across the floor in single file. They all shivered terribly. Their bodies were so confused as to what temperature to be. "Good turtle. Stay," Connor said to the sciencey turtle. The turtle squinted at him and spat a stream of water in his face. "Sorry, I didn't mean to patronize." "Oh my lord," Red gasped and tears fell. "Look up there." She pointed above them in one of the most gruesome sights the twin had ever seen. Dozens of mermaids were hung upside down from their tails across the dome-shaped cave ceiling. They were all weak and frail. Some breathed heavily while others didn't breathe at all. Some were just skeletons while others were close to becoming one. "What are they doing up here?" Alex said, covering her mouth in horror. She wanted to save them all, but knew it wouldn't be possible. At least not today. "Those are probably the TheSeaWitch's customers who couldn't fulfill their bargains," Froggy said. Jack was wide-eyed and white-faced, terrified that would believe in Goldilocks to suffer in the same conditions. She implored him to stick to their plan in spite of what they saw, even though they couldn't tell she was hesitant herself. The group traveled farther into the cave. A whale's rib cage was positioned like a grand staircase, leading to another smaller cave. Jellyfish carcasses covered the entrance like a curtain. A large rocky platform at the base of the ribs acted like a small stage. The TheSeaWitch must have enjoyed looking down on her customers. "Are you ready for this?" Connor asked Goldilocks. She nodded, mustering up as much bravery as she could. Jack kissed her as though it would be the last time. The passionate display normally would have made the twins look away, but they all shared Jack's reluctance as he said goodbye to the woman he loved. "I love you," he whispered to her ear. "Likewise," she said and winked at him. The tween huddled together, reiterating their course of action. "All right, we are ruthless pirates who have kidnapped Queen Red," Froggy said, and gestured to the twins. "I have been cursed to live out my days as a frog, and you have been cursed to remain adolescents." The twins nodded. "Aye, aye, Captain," Connor said, and saluted. "Have fun! It's like a little play," Red said and excitedly clapped her hands. "Who'll I be?" "You'll be hiding behind me, with me," Jack said. "We'll be back up in case they run into any problems." "Let's hide back here," Jack said, and pulled the young queen behind a large rock. "It's always best to have backup." "Let's make this a little more believable," Froggy said, taking the rope off his shoulders and tying it loosely around Goldilocks. She legitimately looked like a prisoner now. "Shall we?" The four of them traveled up to the rocky platform while Red and Jack hid behind the large rock. "Hello," Froggy said, called out the whale-witch. "TheSeaWitch? We've come to make a trade." Their anticipation made time go by incredibly slowly as they waited for the TheSeaWitch to appear. Just when they began wondering if she would ever show her face, they heard horrible scraping noises from behind the jellyfish curtains. A series of heavy footsteps, several footsteps, sounded through the cave, like a giant spider was approaching. The TheSeaWitch appeared through the jellyfish curtain. Her skin was pale turquoise and scaled. Tall blades of seaweed grew straight out of her head like her hair. She had a wide face with wide turquoise lips, round insect-like black eyes. She wore a gown made of dark shell that had several mussels and sea polyps growing out of it. She walked on 6 legs, and a pair of claws peeked out from under her gown, as though she were a part crustacean. She cuddled a cuttlefish in her arms, stroking it like it was a small slimy pet. "Customers," the TheSeaWitch hissed in a snake-like voice. "Welcome, fellow vertebrates, to my underwater underworld." The twins were shivering from being so cold. The TheSeaWitch didn't notice they were trembling from fear as well. "Get me out of here," Goldilocks yelled, playing the part of Captain Red. "It smells so nasty in here. I want to go home. I want to go back to my castle." "And who might we have here?" inquired the TheSeaWitch, interested by the choice of words. "We have brought you Queen," Froggy started, but Goldilocks interrupted me. "I'll introduce myself, thank you," she said, playing the part impressively well. "I am Queen Red Riding Hood, the Red Riding Hood Kingdom, and if you don't release me at once, I'll have my soldiers swim down here and make ink of you all." The TheSeaWitch's eyes widened. Not only was she buying it, but was intrigued. "Capture Queen, you said?" she asked. "And if you wish to trade her for what?" "We come for your jewels," Froggy said. The TheSeaWitch let a long hissing laugh that sounded like it might have come from a dying cat. "You insult me with your offer," she said. "I'll make a deal with you. I'll give you one of my pearls in exchange of the Queen." She gently placed her hand over the pearl necklace wrapped around her neck. Each pearl was black, and they were all different sizes and shades. "Which, please," Connor said. "We got a living, breathing queen. We're the ones who should be requesting more from you." The TheSeaWitch eyed him. She didn't like being beaten at her own game. "You are just a large frog and 2 children. Tell me how you acquired a queen," she hissed. Connor laughed a little too hard. "We only appear as a frog and children because that's how we've been cursed to spend eternity." He pointed to his sister. "This girl used to be a 6-foot man with the hairiest chin in all the kingdoms." Alice closed her eyes and assembled enough persistence to go along with her brother's ridiculous backstory. "Grr, I miss me man body," she said in her best impression of a pirate's voice. The Sea-Witch looked down at them peculiarly. She had been hanging on every word they said until this point. I was on my royal boat when they scooped me up and brought me here, Goldilocks cried, trying to authenticate their tale. Do we have a trade, Sea-Witch? Froggy called up to her. Or shall we make the queen back to the land and sell her to the ogres? The Sea-Witch thought of it, stroking the cuttlefish as she did. Very well, she said. I believe we have a deal. The Sea-Witch climbed down the whale's ribs toward them. They got a better glimpse of her black pearl necklace, and their hearts fluttered the knowledge that it was exactly what they needed. But the twins' eyes fell to a familiar ring she wore on her turquoise finger. It was silver and had 2 diamonds, one blue and the other pink. Alex and Connor looked down the fourth between the ring and each other. Was this just a coincidence, or had their worlds collided more than they realized? That ring, Alex said. Where did you get it? The Sea-Witch glanced at her ring, then suspiciously down at Alex. The same place I get all of my jewelry, she is. From people like you. From creatures like them. She jerked her head toward the ceiling, where all the mermaids hung. Do you want to make a trade, or not? Yes, Froggy said, getting the twins back on the subject. A conniving smile stretched across the Sea-Witch's face. Hand over the queen first, and I'll give you the jewels, she said. Nice try, Connor said. Give us the jewels, and we'll hand you the queen. The tensions between them grew. As you wish, the Sea-Witch said, through a frown. She raised her arms, and 2 crabs crawled out from under her dress. They crawled under her body, collecting all the jewelry she wore. The crabs climbed down the platform and stood in front of the twins. Froggy untied Goldilocks and pushed her up the platform toward the Sea-Witch. A long black and white striped sea snake slithered out of the Sea-Witch's gown and toward her. On the count of 3, we'll make the exchange, the witch said. 1, 2, 3. The twins took the jewels from the crabs, and the snake wrapped around Goldilocks like a living rope. Alex and Connor pocketed the pearls and the other jewels. They were happy the trade had been made, but they desperately didn't want to leave Goldilocks behind. This has been splendid, Froggy said with a nod, and slowly backed away from the platform. Pleasure doing business with you. Not so fast, the Sea-Witch hissed. The crabs jumped into the other side of Froggy and the twins, blocking their way out. Do you think I would let you go without checking to make sure this trade was truthful? The Sea-Witch reached her gown and pulled a dried-up blowfish from inside it. She broke off the blowfish's needles and pricked Goldilocks' finger with it. She raised her cuttlefish toward the bleeding finger and stuck out its tongue from its legs and tasted it. Froggy and the twins were so anxious they could hear one another's hearts beats. They didn't have planned for this. The cuttlefish turned bright blue. The Sea-Witch frowned angrily and knocked Goldilocks on the ground with one of her claws. Liars! My cuttlefish has turned blue. He did not taste royal blood, she screamed. Uh-oh, Alex said. The crabs leaped to the twins. The Sea-Witch threw her cuttlefish and it hit Froggy, wrapping its legs around his face. All 3 frantically fought off the sea creatures attacking them, but it was no use. The crabs pinched and poked the twins, scratching them and drawing blood. Jack ran to the twins' side and with 2 quick blows of his axe, chopped both the crabs in half. Froggy mumbled from under the cuttlefish. Red ran to help Froggy. She took a good look at the cuttlefish and then, not wanting to touch it, took her shoe off and began hitting the cuttlefish with it. Not helping, darling, Froggy mumbled into the cuttlefish claps. She was mostly hitting him in the head. Across the lair, Goldilocks pulled off on one of her arms free from under the snake and grabbed its head. With one tug, she pulled the serpent off her body. The Sea-Witch was livid over such an easy escape. She stretched her legs and grew twice the height. She lunged toward Goldilocks, her claws snapping as loudly as gunshots in her direction. Goldilocks, behind you! Jack screamed. Goldilocks swung the snake around, cracking it like a whip, and fought the Sea-Witch off like a lion tamer. She dumped and tumbled on the ground, barely avoiding fatal punches. The twins had to cover their eyes, fearing they were about to witness the Snow Queen's prophecy come true. Red gave the cuttlefish one final smack with her shoe, and the tentacled creature fell on the ground. Jack ran up to it, kicked across the cave. The cuttlefish flew across the cave and hit the TheSeaWitch square in the face and wrapped itself tightly around her head. They could hear a loud, muffled scream as the TheSeaWitch struggled to free herself, a prisoner to her own pet. "Let's get out of here," Jack yelled. Goldilocks jumped off the platform, somersaulting through the air, and landed near the others. The group ran through the cave and back toward where they had left the giant sea turtle. They retrieved their scallop shell and strapped them around their faces. Jay jumped on the turtle's back and grabbed hold of them. "Go, turtle, go!" Connor yelled, and the giant sea turtle might not have heard him, but they could clearly tell their panicked faces that they needed to get out of there fast. The turtle dove into the water and swam as fast as he could down the tunnel. He bolted past a group of sharks waiting at its entrance before they knew something was wrong. He passed all the anglerfish and they seemed on their way into the cave. Their hands began to move a little quicker as they floated in the water. They could tell something wasn't right, but were just waiting on orders to intervene. The turtle swam through the canyon faster than they had ever seen a turtle swim before. For a moment the twins felt relieved. They had nearly escaped death once again, but then a high-pitched sound boomed through the ocean, causing a ripple of travel through the water. It sounded like a scream. The TheSeaWitch must have freed herself from the cuttlefish. Connor looked back at the canyon and had to blink twice. The TheSeaWitch's army of anglerfish and sharks erupted from the canyon and headed toward them like a swarm of underwater wasps. It wasn't long before the terrifying swarm caught up to them. A few of the sharks zeroed in on the turtle. Jack was quick to punch one of the nose and try biting the turtle's flipper. Froggy kicked another one and it crashed into yet another. It was like an underwater car chase. A moment later, the TheSeaWitch's creatures had gained up speed and the turtle was surrounded. They needed a miracle if they wanted to escape. Suddenly, a series of colorful blurs zoomed past the turtle, taking the sharks and anglerfish with them. The twins looked at each other, each making sure the other had seen it too. More colorful blurs jetted past them, one by one, picking off the creatures trying to harm the turtle. The mermaids had come to the rescue. As they were moving through a colorful meteor shower, the twins saw hundreds of mermaids shooting through the ocean and tackling the harmful fish around them. Some mermaids carried spears and shields, others sheared nets. The twins found themselves in the middle of a massive underwater battle. The turtle and his passengers had made it back into the bay. They could see the granny's belly floating the surface above. The great sea turtle surfaced next to it, and Froggy quickly escorted everyone from the back of the turtle to the deck of the ship. "Thank you," Alex said to the giant sea turtle. It dipped its head slightly to her and then disappeared again beneath the water. Alex and Connor ran down the steps of the lower deck. "Where's the fire?" the harp asked them, but they ignored her. Alex and Connor retrieved the wand of wonderment from under Goldilocks' cot. They put it on the floor and dropped out all the TheSeaWitch's jewels beside it. The black pearls instantly collided around the base of the scepter, creating a handle. "It's working! We did it," Connor said to his sister, Din joining in the celebration. "Alex, what's wrong?" Alex was staring down on the floor at a piece of jewelry that hadn't connected itself to the wand. She picked up the ring with the pink and blue diamonds on it they had seen the TheSeaWitch wearing. "It's the ring," she said. "It's the ring Bob got Mom." "How do you know it's the same ring? And not just a similar one?" Connor asked. "I'm a 13-year-old girl. I know a ring when I see one," Alex exclaimed. "Does this mean Bob is in the Land of Stories?" Connor asked. A thunderous set of footsteps fell from the steps from the upper deck. It was Jack. "Hey, you two," Jack said. "We could use a hand up here." The twins put the wand away and joined the others in the upper deck. Just when they thought they were safe, anglerfish were jumping out of the water and landing on the ship. They snapped their massive jaws at their ankles. The twins joined Red in kicking the hideous fish overboard. Goldilocks picked up her sword and began a gruesome game of baseball with the fish flying up from the water. Jack and Froggy tried starting up the ship, releasing the sails and firing up the flames as high as it can go. "We gotta get away from the water as quickly as possible," Jack yelled. The granny rose higher and higher above the bay. "We're getting away!" Red cheered, still kicking unwelcome fish off the deck. The wasps The ship was gaining height at a steady speed. Just when they could finally sigh with relief, an anglerfish Red and the twins had missed on the deck, flopped high into the air, and tore the granny's balloon and sails with its huge teeth. The ship began to descend out of the sky, spinning out of control. They shed redded sails above them, acting more as a floppy parachute than as a balloon. They couldn't tell where they were falling. It wasn't back into the bay, but toward land somewhere in the distance. Everyone was screaming, grabbing onto anything or anyone they could prevent themselves from being flung off the ship. The twins found each other's hands in the middle of the chaos, and they held to each other, convinced these would be their last moments alive. With a giant thud, the granny crashed to the ground. Everything was hazy from then on. They could hear Claudius barking. They heard the harp yelling from below. They heard Froggy Red moaning. They saw Jack and Goylax trying to stand. They looked down the land around them, saw gigantic boulders surrounding the horizons. Two figures from moving toward them. One was small and stout, the other tall and gnarly, gangly. They both had large ears and ugly faces, and leaned toward the twins, inspecting them. "Well, well, well," said a gruff voice. "What do we have here?" The twins had one horrifying realization before passing out completely. They had crashed in the troll and goblin territory. Alright, that is the end of chapter 21. And don't forget to subscribe if you want to hear more from The Land of Stories, The Enchantress Returns, and plenty more books to come. Also, if you have any really good book recommendations, comment down in the videos below. And overall, I hope you enjoyed a good reading.